Owusu wasn't able to be with us today due to another very important activity he had to attend to. So we'll call on Mr. Gabriel Crunchy to give us this presentation. So let's welcome Mr. Gabriel.
Good morning, everybody. So my name is Gabriel, as you mentioned, and I'm representing the consulting team to deliver a short presentation. I'll try and make sure it is very summarized on the issues so far, and then the discussions in terms of the findings and discussions, and finally put out a few of the recommendations. Thank you very much. So basically, as indicated earlier, we sought out to look at the informal sector and their tax compliance behavior as it stands within the Greater Accra region. And primarily, the issue has been that So, yeah. Okay. So, this will be the outline of the presentation, but I'll be very brief at the early stages and then focus on the key issues that we want to talk about. Basically, what we observe over the period is that generally, the informal sector, especially within developing countries, form a huge proportion of the economies of developing countries across the globe. And if you check, this is deeply seated within the context of Africa and other Asian countries like that. Now, from the graph we see here, you realize that within Africa, the informal sector largely controls the economy, if I should put it that way, because they are the majority when it comes to their contribution to GDP, etc., etc. However, when it comes to their contribution to taxes or tax revenues of the country, this is significantly low, and that has been the case over the period. And this is the basis for which this particular research sits, that why is it that the informal sector is very huge within our country, within our setting, but then when it comes to their tax contribution, we don't see much of them. And what can be done in order to be able to bring them or rope them into that tax bracket and get enough from them to support the economy of our country. So we set out to basically look at the tax compliance levels of the informal sector within the Greater Accra region specifically, because one, the Greater Accra region is primarily a metropolitan region which has well represented in it every form of informal activity that goes on within the country. So a closer look at the Greater Accra region gives us a fair picture of what happens globally when it comes, nationally when it comes to the informal sector and how they operate in terms of their tax issues. Okay. In terms of methodology, we employed a mixed method approach, that is the qualitative and quantitative approach. We began with the qualitative approach by sitting down and having some focus group discussions with people from the various sectors within the informal sector. And what we did is, one, to group the informal sector into three key subsectors, which is to look at the service or hospitality sector, the petty traders or traders in terms of those who are into selling either by the roadside, in their various homes, in the various markets, and trading in such, operating in such environments. And also looked at the manufacturing sector, that is those who are on their own, all right, produce a few things, the petty things, whether drink production, etc., etc., to support the economy. And the manufacturing also included the creatives, that is carpenters, plumbers, etc., etc. So that's how we classify them. A second step of classification was to also group the Greater Accra region into 4 zones as indicated by Jennifer. And we group them into industrial zone, the peri-urban zone, the central business district, and also the coastal zones. So those are the 4 key zones that we looked at for the Greater Accra to ensure that every part of the region is well represented within the discussion. So that's what we did, and we got people from these areas to come together to sit down and have some focus group discussions. And we had 3 concurrent sessions over 3 different periods. So we did in total, or in sum, about 9 focus group discussions in that same day. And that covered all the various sectors. The second part looked at the quantitative aspect, where we also employed a survey instrument which was approved or discussed, input was taken and approved by most of the people here who were at that particular validation meeting and also discussion. And we went out to gather data from all the various, some people within the informal sector, to also know their views, their perceptions of what tax is, and also what factors prevent them. That is, what are their challenges when it comes to tax compliance. So those are some of the issues we looked at in terms of methodology. Now, in terms of results from so these are a few of the pictures from our focus group discussions. Now, from the focus group discussions, we realized that generally when it comes to their level of tax knowledge and also compliance, they had fragmented and superficial knowledge or understanding of what tax is. And most of them associated their tax liabilities, particularly with the tax stamps or the stamps they pay or the municipal levies that they pay to the particular municipal that they find themselves in, rather than the actual income tax, that is disclosing how much they generate in terms of revenues and how much they are supposed to pay with regards to their tax liability associated with the same. In terms of, I think it is working, so kindly. In terms of their compliance, the few people who believe that they comply with their tax liabilities or they pay their taxes were not regular taxpayers. So some of them were one-off payers. That is, probably for the purpose of registration, their first year they registered, they were told that, okay, because they've operated for a certain number of years, they should pay a certain amount. So they went ahead to pay, and that was it. Some of them thought they paid 1, 2, 3 after they thought that it doesn't bring any benefit to them, it doesn't help them in any way, and it is rather adding on additional costs to their business, so there's no point going on to pay. Some of them also only paid if and only if or when the tax officials come around to harass them or to give them pressure to come and pay, and that is the only time that they will pay. Sometimes their stores or shops will have to be logged before they will go ahead and pay. So those were some of the issues that came up in terms of their level of compliance. In terms of gender-specific issues, generally, there were no gender disparities when it comes to tax payment and all that, or the tax laws. But they also believe that the system also lacked gender-responsive structures, in that the system does not separate men from women. And whether you are a man, you are a male, or you are a mother, you are a father, whatever it is, it does not matter what you do, how your time is structured, how you operate as a business. it doesn't matter at all. It only takes into consideration that, okay, since you are operating, then if this is the level of revenue you are generating, you should come or you should make yourself available and pay. Again, the women feel that when it comes to indirect taxes, they are more exposed than the men, especially for the petty traders who go out there and they have to carry their load around into the market every day. When they go, they are asked to pay some lampo, they are asked to pay some ticket for some ticket, etc., etc., and that makes them largely exposed to some indirect taxes. Again, in terms of their purchases from their suppliers, they tend to pay a lot of VAT on that compared to the males within that particular sector. Again, the women feel that normally they are intimidated or coerced when it comes to their engagement with the tax officials, and they believe that because the tax officials perceive them to be weak, also they are not as knowledgeable as it is when it comes to the tax laws. These people intimidate them with their tax knowledge and their understanding of the tax issues and force them or coerce them to make certain payments, which possibly they may not have to even pay. In terms of their perceptions of the unfairness of the tax system, the informal sector generally believe that the tax system is inequitable. That is, when you compare the informal sector to the formal sector. And this came up strongly because, especially with those who go out in the market, have shops within the market, they believe that they have to pay tickets every day. And if they accumulate how much they pay daily over the period, maybe to the month or at the end of the year, compared to how much revenue they generate, they believe that they are paying more in terms of the rates compared to those within the formal sector. Again, they believe that the flat tax rate also does not really help them when it comes to, at the end of the day, the total tax liability that they have to pay. Also, generally, they don't trust the government in terms of what their tax revenues are being used for. And they kept asking the question, those of us who sat in the conversations with them, they kept on asking the questions, okay, we've paid taxes, but what are these taxes used for? Where does it go? Because our roads are still not done. Even gutters along our roads, we can't see anything. Hospitals don't work. NHIS doesn't work. Our schools are in poor shape. And even free SHS that we thought we had is not the best, and our children are suffering. So where does the tax revenues go? So they kept complaining, and normally you get them dwell so much on some of these issues such that you tend to think that the conversation has changed from simple tax compliance issues to even developmental issues and also political issues rather than what we're discussing. So generally, they don't trust in terms of what the revenues that are received by the officials and where they go, because they don't see what these revenues are being used for. We also discuss issues concerning formalization, whether they will want to register their businesses, especially for a large chunk of the people we engaged. We realize that most of them, or a large number of them, have not registered their businesses. However, they believe that registering their business will go a long way to help them in terms of helping them to gain some level of credibility for their businesses, especially those who get some contracts from either within or even sometimes outside the country, because they know that their registration certificate will give them the credibility that indeed their business operates within the country. Again, it gives them a lot of access to other contracts and also credit facilities, because before any bank or any financial institution would give you the opportunity to come on board and give you some loans or some credit facilities to continue your business, you need to show them evidence of your business and what you do. So the key issues that came up when it came to the understanding of what the benefits of formalization are. However, some of them are still not registered for a number of reasons. One, the complexity of the procedure, and that is probably because when you go there, ideally, it should be a smooth process, but because of the interruption by Goro boys, intentional delays by the officials, just so you may have to pay bribe, etc., drag the processes and make things difficult for them to register their business. Again, they believe that the cost involved when it comes to registration is too high, and also they don't even know, some of them, even though they know some benefits, some of them don't believe that the benefits come to them. They don't have a clear understanding of what the benefits of registering their businesses are, because without these issues, without registering, they could still go ahead and do their business and generate the amount of revenues that they want anyways. So, and then also, they believe that it is more targeted at the big businesses rather than the small businesses. So they want maybe a certain registration process that clearly distinguishes these classes of business and makes it easier for the smaller businesses to be able to register. When it came to the survey, as I said, we surveyed about 400 individuals within the informal sector across the various subsectors as have been indicated. And generally, they were dominated by females, as we already know when it comes to the informal sector. Largely, I mean, there is a clear indication of the kind of people in terms of age who fall within the informal sector. Most of them are married, and we know how the religious inclination of our country are. In terms of their education, you will realize that more than almost 60% of the people within the informal sector has at best basic education, with a lot of them not having even secondary or tertiary education. So that is something that needs to be looked at in terms of, if we are talking about tax education, where should it be at? Because even if you start tax education from the secondary level, it means that you've cut a large number of the people who fall within the informal sector out. And that makes it difficult to implement tax policies at that level without looking at these people. And clearly, most of the respondents had been in business for quite some time. Now, in terms of specific to their businesses, realize that in terms of the sectors, generally, most of them fell within the retail business, that is small and petty traders, whether along roadsides, in the markets, or food vendors, etc., and all that. Followed by the services, which is those who provide basic, who are into the basic small restaurants along the roads or within our communities, and also other services that may be provided. The manufacturing and creative sector were not largely represented within the data, but also quite significant. About 22% of the respondents fell within that subsector. In terms of registration, all right, you realize that most of them have not been registered with the Registrar General. But if you come down and check with the Assembly, more than 50% of the people within the informal sector have registered with their various assemblies. But that is not the case when it comes to whether GRA or the Registrar General. And that gives us, again, a fair idea when it comes to policy in terms of getting these people to pay taxes, is to be able to probably collaborate with these assemblies or the various municipalities and get them registered for all the various stakeholders right at that level, rather than waiting for them to have to go through these 3 steps of registration. You have to register at the assembly, go to the GRA to register before, or Registrar General to register before you can still go and register with GRA. It will be very important to make it very easy to do it once and for all, so, access them and also have them pay their taxes. Knowledge levels, they believe that they have a fair knowledge of the taxes. That's what they perceive. At least they've heard of tax, what it is, or something like that. But in terms of performing their tax responsibility, or when it comes to their tax responsibility, again, they have a fair idea. But whether indeed they pay their taxes is a different story. So to assess their tax compliance, whether they pay, they file, they pay or not, realize that generally, all right, on a scale of 1 to 7, picking the median point as 4, you realize that generally they believe that they are not that tax compliant in general. But if you look at their intentions to pay tax, you realize that yes, they have intentions, they intend to probably in the future make the necessary effort to pay their taxes. But when we look at their actual tax behavior currently, you would realize that generally these people are not willing and they do not file or disclose their tax their revenues for the purposes of tax payment. We try to look at whether there is disparity between the various genders, and it was clear that there's no significant difference when it comes to their tax compliance or intentions to pay taxes when it comes to male and female. We extended that to the various, next slide please, to the various subsectors within the informal sector, and realized that there is some significant differences when it comes to their overall tax compliance and also in terms of their specific tax intentions to pay taxes. When it comes to their actual tax behavior, clearly there was no differences, indicating that across the various subsectors, they are still not complying with their tax responsibilities, or they are not paying their taxes in currently as it stands. But in terms of intentions, there is some disparity. And yeah, you would realize that generally between the services and the manufacturing subsectors, there is no significant difference. But between the service and retail, and also between the manufacturing and retail, there is a clear difference as to their intentions and also their overall tax compliance. But when it comes to their current tax behavior, I realize that there is no clear difference. And that is why you could see that in terms of disparity, the retail sectors are far above, have higher, significant higher intentions to pay. In terms of their overall tax compliance, they are at the willing to pay compared to these other two in terms of their willingness to pay. We also looked out for what are the challenges that they face when it comes to their tax compliance. What are the issues or the barriers? What are the reasons for which they are not willing to pay their taxes? And if you look at the issues that have been spelled out here, generally the first three, apart from the first one, or the first three, looks at misappropriation or corruption issues. And that is because they perceive that generally the government is corrupt, their tax revenues are not being used for the right purposes, and whatever that is generated from the tax, they don't see what it is being used for. And this goes back to confirm our discussions with them when it came to the focus group discussions, and some of them even go to the extent to believe that the government and tax officials use their tax revenues to follow women, to enrich themselves, and to do other things rather than focusing on developmental issues that actually affect their business in terms of operation. Again, the other issues that came up when it comes to the reasons why they are not willing, or the challenges that they face in terms of their tax compliance issues, is with regards to their unstable or irregular income levels, which is very characteristic of the informal sector, because there could be a day you would go and you make thousands of Ghana cedis, no matter how small you are. And then there could be days you go everywhere, those who carry things and sell, move around to sell, you go everywhere and nobody will call you to buy anything at all. So that makes it difficult when it comes to their tax compliance. Other issues like tax education, low level of tax education, and also sensitization, and also high tax penalties, because people believe that and it came up also in the focus group discussion, that people believe that if I'm in my house doing my business without showing myself to the tax officials, they don't know me. And there was one lady in the focus group discussion, there was one lady who indicated that, yes, I've registered. When I registered, they wanted me to pay about 1,000 cedis in terms of the registration, and also because they've operated for a while, how much they have to pay with regards to tax. Great. But because she didn't want to pay, she said after everything went through, she decided to just go back and continue her business in the house. Nobody knows her location. Nobody knows where she is, but she still sells and make a lot of money. So it didn't matter when it comes to that. And also those who default believe that if they are going back to pay, they are likely to be asked to pay back the amount that they've defaulted with some interest, and that is too much when it comes to cost to their business. So there is no point going back to the tax officials to disclose their revenues for tax payment. So I guess by talking about the results, I've touched on these issues, so there's no need to go ahead and talk too much. But to land on the recommendations and steps that need to be taken, we believe that there is a need for clear tax education to the informal sector, consistent tax education, and to be able to achieve this, not just to look at them in terms of the current informal sector and what goes on, but also go beyond just what exists or the people within the informal sector now, and start the tax education right from even the basic level. Probably put it within the mathematics course as one topic, so that they have a fair idea that there is something that they need to look at. Then at the SHS level, maybe they could be exposed as part of it, which is practiced in other countries, such that as young as you may be aware of what your tax responsibilities are. But when it comes to those who are already in the system, then the tax education or the issues of tax compliance the tax laws should be simplified and made very easy for them to understand. And you realize that generally, our laws have a certain language that even scares even those of us who have been to school, the workforce and all that. So it becomes difficult. Sometimes you know what you are reading, but you still don't understand what it actually means. So there will be the need to make it as simple as possible, clear in its terms, so that people will understand and know what to do or what is expected of them when it comes to their taxes. Also, to the ministry and possibly the GRA, it will be necessary for them to create some digital tax platforms, whether mobile application, USSD codes, that will make it very easy and seamless when it comes to your payment of your tax or performing your tax responsibilities or paying your taxes at the end of the period. That will make it very easy, so that once you do that, you will get either a receipt or a certain code that when a tax official comes to you, you can easily show the code. They can verify from their system and know whether you've paid or not. So that will be very... Can the volume... Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Also, there will be the need for accountability on the part of the government. And what are we saying? That there should be some real-time tax revenue platform, tracking platforms that should be made available so that everybody can easily access. And also, more importantly, there should be some projects and developmental project that is tied to the taxes that is coming from the informal sector. Probably create a market for them. Probably create some access to some specific forms of credit, etc., etc., specifically for the informal sector, so that they know that if I pay my taxes, if I have what it takes, the necessary documentation suggesting that I pay my taxes, that will go, or that will give me clear access to some of these facilities and all that. And again, there will be the need to also focus on not just helping the informal sector people to formalize for the purpose of formalization and collecting taxes only, but also formalize for the purpose of growing, because immediately they are able to grow, it means that they are generating more income, more revenues, which suggests that the tax officials can then also collect huge amounts from them. So when it comes to helping them to formalize and continue with their business, it should be focused on continuity, one, and also growth of their business, rather than just looking at getting them into the tax system to collect taxes from them and then let them go on with their own thing. So that also came up strongly when it came to some of the recommendations. Also, we are saying that we should introduce flexible tax payment options for the informal sector, unlike in the case of the formal sector, where we can clearly identify how much revenues they are generating over the period. They have clear timelines as to when they have to come and pay and all that. Given that the informal sector has irregular income streams, it will be necessary for them to be given some form of flexible means of paying their taxes, either on a daily, on a monthly, or weekly basis. They should be allowed to some time to pay their taxes rather than being too strict on them, and also applying the same rules that apply to the formal sector or the big corporations within the country. So those are a few of the issues that came up in our discussions. I would like to end here, and if there are any other things that will come up, we'll discuss it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Mr. Gabriel. So in the interest of time, I would like to open up the forum for questions on this presentation. Also, we've set up a coffee break at the back, so we can go there and then pick up some snacks for ourselves. All right. So open forum for questions, please. Okay, so in the absence of any question, okay, Dr. Combat.
It's actually not a question per se, but just to commend them for this beautiful work, excellent work. Actually, I was just putting down some of the points that the research raised, and they actually confirm what we have also come up with. And for instance, it says tax knowledge is very low, which is 100% correct. A lot of the taxpayers are just not aware of the essence of even paying tax, although they are doing business. They feel the income I earn is wholly mine. I mean, nobody should come and take a peswa from it, you see, especially the unregulated, traders. So it's very true. And then they are equating taxes to MMDAs. It's 100% correct. This is what we encounter when we go to the field. It talked about irregular tax payments. 100% correct. They are not just regular at all. They are not just ready to pay. And if you get one taxpayer to pay once, he or she feels that is the end of it. Metriak Accra ma buying, so it's fine. So this is 100% true. And then the intimidation, we've heard about that as well. And then distrust, corruption. Yeah, we've heard about that, except that we don't engage in side checks and side ducks. That one, we don't do that. Yeah, but that is also true because some taxpayers, when you go to them, that is what they will tell you. That just mistrust and the fact that taxpayers are a bit corrupt, except that they don't actually mention that we engage in side checks and DAX, side checks, DAX. And then in terms of the one of the recommendations, very perfect, the use of let's say trying to automate payment of taxes in the sector. Actually, we've come up with a USSD code 222. It's actually a way of paying tax using the MOMO. And then you also talked about verification. We've done something like that. So those who are able to use the USSD 222, they can also use 880 to confirm or to verify the tax payment. The last thing I would say is that if we can have, we are taking this to GR, if we can have a recommendation on sending text messages to taxpayers, that would be very good. Sometimes I get a text message from Ghana Water Company, and that forces me to pay my water bill because they give you the bill and say, okay, you owe 800, you owe 80, 100, 200, and you don't want to owe government or Ghana Water Company, so you immediately pay. So if you can give us such a recommendation, we would like it. Currently it is being piloted, but not on large scale. So if it can be done nationwide, the company has been able to do it. We should also be able to do it. Where taxpayers are sent text messages occasionally, reminding them of their, the taxes they owe, their tax liabilities. That can be very excellent. But I think everything you said here, they are perfect. Of course, we've had internal research to also identify some of them. But I like it because this is coming from external. And there's always this saying, the person cutting a path does not know the back is crooked. So we are just collecting the *222#. Yes. Have you seen it? Click on the GRA. Have you seen it? Now, I don't want you to go further because you'll be deducted. So it works, okay? You can also use the 880 to verify your tax payment. You see, this is designed for the informal sector because they are not able to file and pay taxes online. When you go to our portal, you can pay taxes online. Okay, our portal. That is the gra.gov. Our portal, you can pay taxes over there. But they are in the market. Some of them are using young phones. So we don't want to bother them. Go to the portal and file and pay your. And we've made the form so simple. So we have given them this method. If you have any tax liability to pay, just dial *222# and follow, and then you pay. Go ahead and do it and pay it for us. Thank you.
This initiative, I like the fact that we have such, a study. But I'm not sure if maybe they should tell us if they're also aware of this, USSD code that you just mentioned. And of course, I'm not sure how many of us are aware of this code. Is it that maybe the education is also not going that well because it's not targeting us? That's why we are not, some are not privy to. So it means that GRA should also do more of education because once we are aware, then once we also engage, our informal sector, we can also let them understand that, yes, indeed. But again, would there be anything to show? Because sometimes when you go around, to ensure that there's compliance, you want to have something to indicate that you have paid. If you come around, how are you going to verify that indeed this person he has paid his tax, whatever? How are you going to? All of those are on the same portal.
Oh, so if you are using the USSD, of course, as soon as it is deducted, I mean, you get a message, and then the message will indicate your receipt number. We are even planning that we can use the numbers to run maybe raffles. You getting it? But if it is the USSD, you automatically get a message of the payment. If it is using the online one, you can also get a receipt for that. A message comes back to you, and you have the receipt. If it is payment in the bank, GRA does not collect cash now. So maybe if you go to a taxpayer who has cash to pay, you cannot collect it. It has to be done online. So what our tax officers are doing now is when they go to them, although they may wish to collect the cash, it is not accepted. So they show them how to do it instantly. So they say, okay, you can put it on your wallet, and then I'll take you through the process. You getting it? So when you dial, the next thing is GRA. The next stage will be 3 tax types. They are talking about custom taxes. They are talking about domestic taxes. And then they are talking about VIT. The VIT is the vehicle income tax. So all the drivers are supposed to pay using the 222 hash. They are not supposed to pay cash now. And then when you go further, then you pay, and then you get your receipt. So our officers are actually doing this across the length and breadth of the country, educating the informal taxpayers how they can just easily pay the tax without any hassle. Right. Thank you.
Sorry, just to add to this, please, is this has it been rolled out already? Because I think most of us are not aware of it. The short code.
Oh, it has been with us for the past 2 years.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Most of us are not aware of it.
You are not aware.
We are aware. Budget is aware. That's how we pay our taxes.
Budget is aware.
Yeah, so our payee and everything, account uses that link to
Yeah.
pay for us.
The budget is aware.
Yes, it's very
The
low.
budget is aware.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. But this is convenient for the informal sector because you can go online and pay. You getting it? But the informal sector taxpayers, they are not able, or they don't even want to hear go online and pay tax. That is why we generated this specifically for them. I hope you're getting it. And it has been with us for over 2 years now. And in fact, vehicle income taxpayers, that is what they used to pay their taxes. And if you have some money on your wallet, just do it and send 100 Ghana cedis to GRA. You will receive a receipt.
Okay.
Refund what?
As Labram tries to send some free handed Ghana cedis. Senior, thanks for the great work done. I was at the validation meeting for the two, and it's quite clear that you took into consideration all the issues that we raised in terms of the contributions that came. Going through the presentation and listening to your findings, one thing came to mind. We would agree that tax administration essentially is premised on a number of factors. Key among them, I'll mention just 4. Identification of the taxpayer. I'm raising this and I'll ask a question at the back of that. Assessment ought to be carried out, and collection will be done. And if there is the need for an audit, the audit will take place. These are some 4 key pillars that ought to be put into consideration. And for the informal sector, identification is the greatest challenge. Identification happens to be the greatest challenge. And I remember when we were validating the tool, the idea of clustering of the informal sector as a major strategy to overcome this challenge of identification came up. Maybe I didn't catch it when you were doing the presentation, but as to whether something like that came up in terms of are there structures within the informal sector that GRA can rely upon? I know they have trade associations. Like you go to Abu Sokan. We did some work some years ago, about 2 years ago, on voluntary tax compliance. That's something that is also informing my question. If you can also validate that. They spoke about they having some associations that GRA falls upon from time to time to get the leaders to encourage their members to pay their taxes. And that is aimed at solving the identification challenge. I don't know what you've actually found out along that line. I'll be happy to learn from you.
What I want to add up is sweet with our education. We do with GRA together. And when after education, they go around from shop to shop to explain this USSD to the informal sector. And like if you say the people should go on the main website, they'll tell you they don't have time. One of the markets, after we've done it, the GRA staff went to the market to put their PC there. When I acquired from there, they said, oh, they went there, the people they wouldn't come. And so, the informal sector is such a complex sector that we need to put a lot of things in place so that at the end of the day, they also contribute immensely towards Ghana's development as well. Thank you.
Okay, maybe Senior, just a brief comment. I think we have to come to a point of accepting the fact that nobody wants to pay tax. Yeah. The informal sector, the issue of tax systems are complex, and so because of that, they cannot pay. If you go deep into it, these are people who do Momo, they transfer money to people all over the place. It's the process he mentioned. If you go onto your MTN app, the process you have to go through to make payments, how different is that from what he has spelled out? And so the issue goes far beyond the complexity. I agree, I've heard that we've done researches where people talk about the complexities. Me, myself, I have issues with some of the complexities, especially when it comes to applying for tax reliefs and all that. If you see the forms you have to complete and all that. That is true, but the process he just described and had shown us, well, Abraham had agreed to transfer some 300 Ghana cedis within a space of, let's say, a minute or two. And so for me, as campaigners within the space also, let's move the discussions beyond the complexities, especially around the informal sector, because they themselves are unwilling generally. All of us, let me put it that way, formal, informal, are unwilling to pay. But if processes have been developed and simplified in this form, then let's sell that message across. Oh, and yet in Christ, as simple as some 5 steps, so that we are able to disabuse their mind. Like she mentioned, they put a whole machine there. People should come freely so that they'll be taken through the process. I wasn't expecting the numbers to troop in. If she had said that, I would have been very surprised. So that is the reality we are confronted with. And as workers within the space, let's continue to encourage people and show them, just like Sweet is doing, that the process is not difficult. You can go through to just disabuse their minds. I'll end on that, but I'll be very happy to hear your response on my initial question.
Yes. So you asked about whether there are...
Just say this. In terms of the processes, they are so straightforward and simple. As Budget mentioned, it could be that they are not well educated on their responsibilities when it comes to payment of taxes. But please, it is not about the complexity of the payments. It's so straightforward. Anybody that has money and wants to try, just try it, and then you see that within less than 1 minute, you see, the next thing will be to enter your Ghana card as an identification number, and then a prompt will come for you to pay. So it's very simple. The only thing is that, as you mentioned, they are not educated to know that there is the need for me to pay tax out of my income. And that is our bane, that is our problem. But not that the processes are complex. Never, they are not. They are not at all. We have designed it in such a way that they have time to do it within 2 minutes, they are done. So please, let's put it in context that it is not a process. It is the education, and we all of us must put our hands on deck, not GRA alone. Thank you.
To quickly respond to the question that came in. So, in terms of trade associations, there are a number of them, and within our discussions with them in the focus group discussion, you realize that there are some of them who are part of those trade associations. And even as a result of that, some of them get free tax education and other forms of education also, and also access to funds to continue with their business. But there is also quite a significant number of them who do not belong to any form of association. They are just operating on their own, especially the creatives and, the artisans, and then the traders as well. So normally when it comes to the services, they normally find themselves within those trade associations, but when it comes to the others, you don't find them there. But one thing we realized from the results is that it is clear that when it comes to registration with the municipality or the assembly, that most of them do. So what we are suggesting is that if that is the case, then that should be the point of registration in terms of for the GRA and also the Registrar General, straight ahead. So that at that one point, by registering once, you tick all those 3 boxes and you're identified by all those 3 people. And with that, you can easily get to them and access them for taxes. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. I think, Doc, on the issue of the awareness, I think, like Benedict said, most of the people are aware of their tax obligation. And beyond the availability of the digital payment platforms, there are arrows, relationship officers that the GRA introduced. They also have a toll-free line. But I think, as Doc has accepted, speaking for them, I think they've not done more publicity about it. But these are very wonderful initiatives that they have done. And this about 3 years ago when we hit ground at Tamale and Sunyani. They told us in the tax forums we did with the GACC, sponsored by Oxfam. And I think we got that information about 3 years ago, that they had the toll-free line. They actually had activated all these. I think publicity on it is a problem. But I tell you what, I mean, it's about compliance and it's about attitudes. And I think over and over we've discussed these things, that it should start from the basic level. As the children get to know about tithes in churches, they see their parents pay. It's a culture. Can we make it a national, culture that we can catch up with the people to understand and practice it? While on it, compliance is always affected by the mindset. If you have a mindset that somebody is taking their money and chopping their money, it creates, you always find a way of running around it. But I think while we are actually, commensurating with the payers of a tax, we should also let them know that it's an obligation. It has a legal bearing, so they have to pay. And there's another issue, again, when we have to connect it with when they have paid. We have to ensure it is used for the purpose for which it was collected for. I think when the balance is why we have been meeting every day. The balance is actually how we bring those who have to pay up their compliance. A few years ago, you had to do a lot with compliance. You hear compliance, and then I think Doc would agree with me. In our interactions, there's been a push for transparency and accountability. My problem is revealed in the last one that the GRA boss did recently. Again, when he met with Guta and the rest, the Ministry of Finance was absent. Okay, so when they are meeting, the person using the money should always be there. And I've cried for GRA every time. Their job ends with collection. They got to collect it. That's what they do. Somebody uses it. They have to be there to explain what they used it for. But that collaboration is what is missing. So if the person collecting is there, the user must also be present so they can. You see, now the GRA boss collected questions from Guta. Now going to tell their bosses. No. In that forum that they were meeting, I thought there should be even visuals on what they are doing, information on what they are doing. That one would be very good for us. I think the GRA is doing a good job when it comes to, the informal sector. They've made inroads. For me, I think they've made inroads, but we have to also make sure the blend works well so that at the end of the day, we'll collect from where we have to collect and get to use it for what we collected it for. Thank you.
Just a quick question for Mr. Dr. Combat. Oh, no, just one question. No, my main concern has to do with the identification bit. I was happy reading a report somewhere from, I think, GRA annual report for 2023 or so, where I noticed the roping in of a huge number of people under the National Identification Card Program. I'll be happy to hear from Dr. Combat. I don't know, maybe if you'll be able to help me, how we can fall on that as well to address this issue of identification of taxpayers within the informal sector. I'll be very happy to know if there is something like that which is ongoing.
Actually, it is not. If we can actually fall on that, we've already fallen on it. You see, we're talking about leveraging third-party data to help improve tax, collection. And so what we have done is we have an agreement with NIA. And so now what happens is we even get the registration real time. So when you go for card, as soon as you go for card, we're able to get your information at our end. It's a matter of just clicking on your name and everything, every information you gave to NIA, we have it. And based on this, through assistance of GIZ and other institutions, we'll be able to actually mine it. And after mining the information, all what we have done is to actually give the information to the tax offices. Currently, we have about 20 tax offices in Greater Accra, and the rest are outside Greater Accra. So we give it to them, and they have to pursue them to bring them to the tax net. So this is what we are actually doing. We are leveraging on third-party data to enhance revenue mobilization. We have MOU with SNIT, because if you pay tax, you are likely to pay SNIT. So we are leveraging on that data as well. DVLA, we have MOU with them. We are leveraging on DVLA data to actually enhance revenue mobilization. So GRA is doing a lot to improve tax revenue performance. Thank you.
All right. Sorry, I actually said I was not going to talk today. But I'm just coming in to talk about the compliance issues, especially as it relates to the informal sector and the point that you're making, which I think is important for me to say something. So it's this platform that GRA has. It's important to understand whether it is a platform that allows for assessment of tax liability before payment, right? So it's not just about payment, but it's also assessment. So I'm a trader sitting in my corner at Makola and selling, and then you say, okay, there's some USSD code, dial it, and then pay something. If that is the approach, taken by the GRA, then clearly people can just wake up and pay anything to you, but that is not reflecting their true level of tax liabilities. Is there a way that GRA can ensure that they go through the compliance process in a way that is ideal, i.e. start from assessment, of course, find a way to get them to file their returns, do an assessment, establish their tax liabilities on quarterly, monthly basis, and then you can then ask them, okay, every month we expect you to pay on this particular date, right? So if the guy is an informal sector player, the first thing is you can't, we're not there yet. You can't do assessment digitally at this stage. At where we are now, as an economy, you cannot. You need to sit and engage them first. So go identify these taxpayers and then do an assessment. Establish their tax liabilities. And of course, you need to also talk about what taxes are they paying? Is it income tax? Is it VAT? Is it whatever? So let's so the GRA must identify the taxes. So I know that mostly we're talking about the presumptive tax regime, i.e. the, what we call the simplified tax regimes, where if you are operating as an informal vendor or whatever it is, we just ask you to pay a simple turnover tax rate on whatever it is, which covers both consumption and income taxes, right? Now, for that as well, we have to first of all start with the issue of assessment. So this USSD code, I don't know whether my senior here can tell us whether that code allows for assessing the tax liability that is due before payment. So that is an important part. Yeah, if that is not done on that code, and of course, if I see somewhere and don't have enough information about me, I can't tell you anything, right? And as you did mention, no one likes to pay tax. It is not today that we're saying it. It is right from the word go when God created man. No one likes to pay taxes, right? And they say that tax is the only certainty in life. So they said there are two things in life which are certain, tax and death. So tax and death. You must pay taxes because you need to have good roads, you need to have hospitals, you need to have whatever it is. So you must pay tax. But why would people want to pay tax? That's another discussion that we can have, on a different date. But clearly, on the payment of tax, on the perspective of paying taxes, I think GRA has an important role to play. And they say that if you start clapping to people who are not there yet, they feel like, oh, we've arrived, and then they become, head bloat. So I don't think GRA has arrived. I'm not sure they are there yet. There's still a lot they need to do. So please, let's not clap too much for GRA. They are not there yet. I'm not going to go into things that, there is still a lot more to do, right? I mean, Dr. Combat can bear me out. The compliance gap in Ghana is one of the biggest, right? The compliance gap in Ghana is one of the biggest. Some put it at 14% of GDP, especially when you look at just VAT. 14% of GDP is the VAT gap. That is a big figure, right? That's a big figure. So if you are doing 14% of GDP and a country, closer to us is doing like 4% of GDP as their compliance gap, and you clapping hands to yourself at 14% of GDP, that's a tax gap. That is what you are not able to collect. It's 14% of GDP. And yesterday I was telling somebody that 14% of GDP tax gap is equivalent to the total amount of revenue that we are collecting already from CIT, PAY, PIT, what do you call it, VAT, and all the other taxes. The tax to GDP ratio is 13.5 or whatever it is. So VAT tax gap alone, if you're able to maximize and collect all that, we don't need any other tax in the country, right? So, but clearly I know there are big issues when it comes to closing the gap, and GRA must work out ways to improve that. And clearly, this issue of informality is at the center of it. So I think there's a lot more work that needs to be done, right? A lot more work that needs to be done. And I'm not sure we are at a stage where we need to be clapping hands to people. Thank you.
I wonder, you see, while at it, let's have at the back of our minds. Sometimes when we are speaking about those who are supposed to pay taxes, in that bracket, there are people supposed to be paying taxes who are not working, so can't pay taxes. And there are those who are also working, but can't pay taxes. This will be a bit tricky, but I will repeat that second one again. There are persons who are working, they are trading, but they can't pay taxes because of how much they are making. You see, so while in the mix of this, when you cast the net wide, you see about 1,000 people supposed to be within the brackets of people who are supposed to be paying taxes. Within that catchfold, there are those who cannot pay taxes because they don't have jobs. And there are those who are working, but per what they are making, they cannot pay taxes. So I just wanted to prompt us. So no, I mean just a prompt. It's just a prompt. So we also know, because if I were looking at the threshold, and you look at the tax-free band, okay, you see a man, he's selling, but from what they are making, you may want to reconsider and look at, because I know people who are even working in government agencies, and coincidentally, the place I did my search from is 2 blocks away from her house. Budget CEO, your house. country director. Yeah, oh, don't worry, I won't mention the house. The security man there, his boss told me that his salary is less than 450 Ghana cedis. A month. Sardonically accept it and take it now. That's what he's accepted. That's what he's taking. 450 Ghana cedis. So when you look at him, he qualifies to pay taxes. He's working. He's on paper. But he cannot pay taxes. That's what we are talking about. So these are the persons you're counting. You're counting that young man. You see, poverty doesn't mean don't dress. Poverty is not stopping nobody from dressing. I'm so broke, I have 10 cedis in my pocket, but I'm dressed. That's the only thing that can keep my soul walking. So you see people well dressed, they earn 400 cedis a month. And so, excuse me, even if they have 3 children, I'm sorry, they can't pay taxes.
Just to, Dr. Combat, just to make a small intervention. As advocates within the space, we need to also come to the point clearly that the Income Tax Act is clear on these subject matters. That if you make an income from employment, from business, or from investment, we are talking about if you make an income. And so as we are seated here, there could be somebody here who is not employed, who doesn't own a business, who is not engaged in any investment of a sort. And so at the end of the month or the year, he might end up not earning any income. But the law is so smart to say that even if you get a gift, you must file returns and pay. If you have a gift. And so the point really is, if even somebody is engaged in business, and at the end of the accessible period, he earns 1 Ghana. By the law, is that 1 Ghana supposed to be subjected to tax? Sometimes we have people within the space discussing equity, but we tilt the rules sometimes so much so that if you are not careful, you begin to advocate against the right principles. Did the person earn the 1 Ghana? Is the 1 Ghana supposed to be taxed? Let's discuss it from that angle. Do you get it? Once a person meets the threshold, if it is 1 Ghana the person has earned, let the person pay. The other distributive effect of the tax revenue in terms of what has it been used for to cushion the poor in society is a different matter. Let's discuss these two differently or from those 2 different perspectives. And Ham, I like the point he raised. What has the taxes been used for? That we must hammer on, but is the person supposed to pay? That aspect must also be dispassionately discussed. If the person is below the threshold, no GRA person will go to the person and say that, pay. The only challenge we have with the informal sector is that the people don't keep appropriate records. And so they themselves, we have asked a very relevant question, and I know Dr. Combat is preparing to answer that question, that how do they go to, what process do they go through to ensure they are doing an appropriate assessment? The person makes sales of 1,000 Ghana cedis. The code is there for the person to pay. The person now has to use his discretion or her discretion to come up with an amount. So they'll go ahead and do that. I'm happy about that to an extent because once people file, GRA will have an information that they can use to follow up on and do an audit of a sort. Did you pay the right amount, blah, blah, blah. The challenge, maybe he will speak to that, is maybe the number of staff of GRA. Do they have the numbers to go after everybody? That's the question we can ask. Automation of the system is trying to address that to a large extent, but is that applicable to the informal sector? So I just want to raise these things broadly so that as advocates within the space, we do not find ourselves in a situation where maybe we might be advocating against the right principles ourselves. And this is not in relation to any question on the floor so far, but just to draw our minds to it. I've been in forums when people talk about people don't earn income, but they are being asked to pay tax. If you don't earn income, where are you going to pay the tax from? Once you have an income, if it is 1 Ghana, that's my position, I may be wrong. If the law exempts you, the law has exempted you. If the law has not exempted you and you are within the bracket and you have that income, no matter how meager it is, let's encourage people to go ahead and pay. Because we are the very people who are at the other end, who are advocating for efficient public service deliveries. If they don't contribute their quota at this end, how can we then go and say they should enjoy at the other end? that will be creating a kind of inequality ourselves in our advocacy work. So I want to just plead on these grounds. Dr. Komba, thank you.
Just on this, the last point that you landed on, sorry. I mean, they say talking can be toxic, right? It's intoxicating. The more you get into the conversation, sometimes you find it difficult to stop. So this issue about some people earning income and they are not supposed to pay taxes or they should not be paying taxes, I think it's completely flawed. So in the language of taxation, we say that everybody must file a return, right? Once you are employed or making income from whatever source, regardless how much it is, you must file a return. Now, when you file a return, the law that relates to that particular tax that for which you are filing that return will then be applied on whatever information that you provide, and it will determine your tax liability, right? So if you are earning 200 cedis or whatever it is, or 450 cedis, example of that security guy, he or she has to file a tax return. Now, when you file your income tax return, our income tax return in Ghana here, we say it has what we call a schedular formula or a structure, where you have band that sort of creates leeway for people with lower income to pay lower tax rates. So from 0 to 5% to 10% to 17.5 and all that, right? So you must file your return, and then the law will then be applied to determine your tax liability appropriately. So I think we don't need to use the word some people are earning money but they cannot pay taxes. Everybody, regardless of how much small, you must pay taxes. I mean, there are instances where artisans who work for me, I actually jokingly tell them that, look, I'm going to withhold your tax liability. And then they will tell me, no, you cannot do that, right? You cannot do that. But you see, we need to find a way to get them to start paying taxes, right? And I think one of the things is that maybe Ghana must find a way to more or less formalize some of these transactions to say that, look, if you have built a house and we know the owner, and then we're gonna find you and then ask you questions about how you paid for the services that was provided, and did you take taxes from those monies that you paid to them, or do you have a sense of whether the guys you paid actually paid taxes and all that? So there should be a way to formalize some of these engagements to ensure that if you are paying somebody who clearly doesn't have the ability to, or who more or less do not have what it takes to actually go and comply with tax obligations, the GRA should make it the responsibility of the service beneficiary to withhold that tax and then remit it to the GRA, because these are people who are likely more visible to the GRA, right? So I think there's a way we can get there to ensure that, look, the guy doing plumbing work for you makes more money in a month than you make by wearing jacket and sitting in the office. Yes. Sorry, please come in.
Okay, so you let me just answer his question. Just to tell you that if you will not praise us, God will raise stones to praise us. Okay, so let me just explain this. So when it comes to the taxpayers, we have formal and informal. We are all aware. Now look at this. When it comes to the informal, we have regulated informal sector taxpayers, and then we have the unregulated. The regulated are those who have actually gone to register their businesses at the registrar of companies. And for those taxpayers, we are able to track them, and then we give them assessment. You getting it? So they have assessment that we have already sent to them. And so the USSD code that you are seeing is just a way of facilitating the tax liability that has been given to them to make it easier for them to what? So not as if they don't have assessment. They already have assessment. I'm talking about the regulated informal sector. I hope you are getting it. When it comes to the unregulated, you know, GRA came up with, LI 2242. That was 2016. That was the tax stamp regime, where they were put on fixed amounts to be paying. You know, when we had the COVID, there was suspension on that. And so when the suspension was lifted in 2021, we decided to come up with the modified taxation. And now what we have done is that if you have a turnover which is below 20,000, you are going to be on fixed amount. And the fixed amounts are as follows. So we have 45 Ghana cedis for those whose turnover will be below 10,000. No, between 10,000 and then the 20,000. So they are going to pay 45,000, 45 Ghana cedis. Just 45 Ghana cedis.
A month, a year.
Pardon? A quarter. Okay. And then we have those whose turnover is going to be below the 10, up to around actually the below the 8,801, you don't pay anything. So between 8,801 and then the 20,000, we have the 45, 35, and then the 25. I hope you're getting it. And then those whose turnover will be between 20,000 and then the 500,000, they are going to pay 3% of their turnover. That is the modified taxation that we are actually launching. I hope you're getting it. So the unregulated, this is how they are going to be paying their taxes. And we have already defined it for them, so they know. So the USSD is just to facilitate the tax payment. In terms of how much they will pay, they are aware. It is not a problem for us. And our tax offices have gone to them to let them know how much they will be paying. I hope it helps.
No, let me make just one quick one before my senior man sit down. Can I just one quick one?
So please, in the interest of time, kindly keep it.
Okay, yeah. So I'm happy with what Dr. Komba said. So yes, there is the tax stamp would give fixed rate for businesses with different levels of turnover. But I think the key point about assessment is really working out the actual turnover of the business. So if I have the rate structure there, and I know that I can be, if I report my actual turnover, which is very high, I'm going to pay a high tax rate, and I have an opportunity to report whatever I want to report. Every rational taxpayer will report a very low turnover so that he can be put on a lower tax rate. So I think my point was, do we take a very deliberate approach to ensuring that we're getting the assessment right? That's the question I was asking. So GRE, informal sector, the lady at Makwala Market selling whatever it is, do you go sit down with them and do a proper assessment to establish that this is fair, real turnover for that particular period, which will then lead to whatever tax liability we are expecting her to pay at the end of the using the USSD code, right? So I think that is the key point, please.
Just as a simple answer. The assessment, you know how it works. So when we are registering them, they will have to give us information about them. Is that not it? So we have a just simplified form. They, fill and then give us information about them. Then based on that, we give them what we call the CJ provisional assessment. Is that not it? And that is what has been happening. And going by this method, it is perfect because at the end of the year, you have to submit your financial statement and it is examined to determine whether the provisional assessment is correct or not. If it is not correct, then we give you the right tax to pay. So that is what we've been doing all over these years. The problem got to do with the unregulated. But for the regulated, we don't have problem at all. But the unregulated, the woman selling wache just down there, how to get tax from that woman is where the problem is. And we have come up with the fixed, tax regime for them. I hope you're getting it.
Well done.
Thank you very much.
It is.
I think in 2023, whether you agree with me that even though our reports showcase that there's a slight reduction in staff numbers, they still collected more. I think that could be related to some of the things they introduced, like the data platforms, like maybe increased education or some of the things like the toll-free and all the rest. I think for me, the main focus should be on the capacity building. I would look at capacity building, and then tooling, retooling them, and then also looking at the systems improvement, which they have started already. I think that's where we can also do a lot of work. But, Doc, you agree with me that there should be some data fine-tuning? Because the NIA data you are using, at the point of registration, the gentleman trained in engineering, if profession is asked, he will put engineer there. If I trained as a carpenter and there's a place, occupation, I'll put maybe something nice for myself over there. And so if we were using data from that projections, we should be looking at maybe having people who have retained some occupations for themselves, but they've not maybe started work. And then in the informal sector, when you were talking about, I think you were also pushing us to the area of licensure. The unions, the various unions that have the artisans, if they can improve their licensure. Here, we can also tie it into the second phase of it, where social benefits, these social grants and things that we are giving, YEA, whatever, we should tie the benefits of these things to tax issues. If we are able to do that, we at least automatically, you remember COVID, when they said they should get blah, 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 quickly they went and they started doing the right thing. So I think some of the social benefits, maybe the GRA and must make this known to the Ministry of Finance in our discussions so that we can have it tied to tax, some of it, like you rightly said, if somebody is coming for a grant and we said they should go for that one, I'm sure a lot of them will do that just so that it will help all of us. But I think the information this morning about this regulated and unregulated, as we knew them, I've always been mentioning that, Doc, these carpenters in the informal sector, they will roof buildings and they are taking 60,000, 30,000. The TNJ guys, they are all there. They are doing that, Andre and all those things. If we can make some efforts at, I have proposed that we tie it to when they are going for their building permits. They should put those professionals, because we can easily, a quantity surveyor can tell you the number of blocks that will be laid for this building to be completed. So if we can do even half of that amount from that permit projection, I think we will be getting some monies from there.
When it comes to taxation, it requires, collaboration and cooperation of everyone. You talked about, leveraging on data from NIA, okay? This is the information that people have provided that we are leveraging on. You cannot blame GRA for the person giving wrong information. There's nothing we can do. You get it? That is why it calls for cooperation of all of us. If all of us are giving the correct information, then that can help us to harness the data for what? To broaden the tax net. I hope we are getting it. But if we are providing wrong information, there's nothing GRA will be able to do about some of these things. I hope you're getting it. So we should always collaborate with GRA. When we collaborate with GRA, it makes GRA's work very, very, very easy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much for this. Yes. I think we've actually had a very interesting panel before the actual panel. So yes, as Dr. Idrisu said, of course, some intoxicants are very powerful. I believe this is an example. Yes. So in the interest of time, we would like to go ahead to the panel.
I had a mic. And all the time I wanted to say something, then it will pass to another person. My own goes to the combat. So with the NIE data again, so when Jeffrey took the mic again and he was mentioning the NIE data, I thought he would have touched on it. One of the key things, when you were giving your submission, you made mention that when you guys are able to get the data from NIA, you segment it and give it to the tax officers to go and then, in quotes, chase the so-called identified taxpayer. However, during that registration, most people use locations that they do not even stay. So how are we, or how is GRA also looking at that? In addition to the occupation part and all that, how are we really going to work on it to get an accurate identity for each of the taxpayers that we've identified? With that being said, we actually have some snacks at the back. We realize that no one is really going to take anything. So I will ask for, Amit, please, 5 minutes break. Everyone should walk and take something, and then let's sit down and then we can continue the discussion. That will work. Thank you. Doc.
Yeah, so this is a very big this is a very big issue for us. And we have reported this issue to NIA. You see, the information that they pick from taxpayers, the information they pick from taxpayers are very, very important for so many institutions, So when they get it wrong at that side, when they get the information, maybe when they come back.
Yes, thank you. We are on 5 minutes break. Recess, please.
Long press. distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Following our recess, I believe we'll begin our panel in about 2 minutes. So let's get ready for a panel discussion. Water. Yes, thank you very much, everybody. Yes, so we'll be beginning our panel discussion shortly. Dr. Combat is granting an interview. Once he finishes, we'll get into it. So let's anticipate a very great discussion. Yes, we are. Okay. Welcome back, everyone, from brief recess. Dr. Combat has joined us now. So our next item on the agenda is to go in for our panel discussion. Yes, so our panel discussion is on the theme, driving voluntary compliance in the informal sector. And we have a power panel today. We have representatives from GRA, we have local government, IFS, and GII. So for GRA, we are going to help me welcome Dr. Combat. Yes, and then for local government, we have the very able Mr. Mubin Mohammed from Ga East Municipal Assembly. He is the development planner for Ga East Municipal Assembly. Next, we have the very vibrant Dr. Abdul Malik Idrisu from the Institute of Fiscal Studies. Yes, and finally, we have another very vibrant man too. He is in the person of Dr. Benedict Do from Ghana. Oh, yes, it's an honorary conferment, you know, stemming from the panel that we had before this panel. Yes. Yes, and then this panel is going to be moderated by the powerful anchor of Budget Ghana. That's my very own country lead, Miss Jennifer Moffat. Okay, audience, so this is your panel, your audience.
Thank you, Hamid. Thank you all for honoring our call for the panel. And I think most of the things we are supposed to do on the panel, we had all that discussion during the interactive session, and we've had a very lengthy and detailed discussion. So this one is going to be like quick wrap up. But first of all, because of our audience on the live stream and for everyone here for purposes, so please, I will want each and every one of us to introduce ourselves, something small about our work, and then we can dive into the conversations. Starting from Dr. Combat. It's not open.
Yes, Alex Combat. I am the Assistant Commissioner in charge of research and policy at the Ghana Revenue Authority. Thank you.
My name is Mohammed Mubin. I'm a development planner with local government service, specifically at Ghana East Municipal Assembly.
You're supposed to keep that. All right, so I'm Abdul Malik Idrisu. I work with the Institute for Fiscal Studies, IFS UK, on a project called the Tax Dev Project. The Tax Dev stands for Center for Tax Analysis in Developing Countries. We currently partner 6 African countries, so i.e. Ghana, Ethiopia, Rwanda, Uganda, Kenya, and Nigeria. Our partnership with the government of Ghana is one of the longest standing. I mean, we've been working in Ghana since 2016. Certainly, more than 8-9 years ago, right? So we have really a long-term collaboration in Ghana. And our work with the Ghanaian government, in particular the Ministry of Finance and the GRA, revolves around 3 work streams. So we develop capacity on issues relating to tax policy analysis. We develop tools, data, resources that can allow for an easy and more effective policy analysis. And then we also undertake what we call ad hoc policy analysis. So one of such work includes what we do in relation to costing of budget-related policy measures, i.e., anytime there's going to be a budget to be read, we support the Minister of Finance to cost proposals that come by way of the budget. So those are the things that we do at IFS, and I'm very happy and really privileged to be here.
Thank you, Malik. I'm Benedict Do. I work for Ghana Integrity Initiative, or Transparency International Ghana, which focuses on issues of anti-corruption and good governance generally. Embedded in that is the issue of fiscal governance, and then its related matters like taxation, which we've been working on over the years. I help in coordinating the Tax Justice Coalition in Ghana, and then also especially I've had the opportunity to also serve on the Executive Council of Tax Justice Network Africa, which is the Africa body when it comes to issues of tax justice. And so happy to be here by the invitation of Budget to participate in this discussion and to share platform with great minds like my good friend to my right and then the other panelists. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We will quickly go through the questions and then we can have the most important one, which is the launch as well. So since this is about taxation and, when it comes to tax, the first person is GRA. I know this morning, we've actually been on the neck of Dr. Combat. He has spoken since he entered into this room. So my first question is going to Dr. Combat on tax administration and tax accountability. People, even in this room today, we've asked questions. We can't see the taxes. We don't know where the taxes go. What are they used for? And some of the findings from the reports, they will say, like I think someone said that most of the money are spent on side check and co. So we want to find out how is GRA working to show the informal sector workers how their taxes are used, especially at the local level? How are we seeing that?
All right. Okay, so thank you very much. It is a very, very good question and very important question because taxpayers will want to know what their taxes are used for. Now, let me explain something a bit. So when you look at GRA Act, that is the 791, 2009. When you look at the Section 3, it mandates GRA to collect taxes, interest and penalties. Now, the taxes so collected, when you look at the same section, it says the taxes so collected should be paid into the consolidated fund. And after we have done that, our work is closed. So the tax policies, the tax measures are actually sent to GRA for implementation. First of all, we should have the tax laws, and when the tax laws are passed by Parliament and are assented to by the President, immediately they are assented to by the President, we welcome the acts, and then we begin to implement them. So far as we have the tax law, we must implement. And so that is our sole responsibility, to implement tax laws. And then when it comes to the use of the monies, that should be the government. And government here, I think, should be Ministry of Finance. But I just want to say something a bit about it. You see, the taxes so collected. Let me explain this. About 30 to 40% of the taxes collected are used to pay salaries, compensations. So what it means is that what is left, of course, we should also take note of the fact that Ghana would have contracted some loans, and therefore will have to pay back some of these loans. So if you take 30% out of the 100%, what is left, part is also going to be used to pay, interest and loans contracted. And so the rest is what we are talking about as to be used for developmental projects. Now, the developmental projects that we are talking about here, they are related to fiscal things that we can actually see. And the fiscal things that we can actually see, we are talking about our rules commonly. Everybody wants to see that the rules are what? Good for us. But we should also bear in mind that the country is so huge and big that when it comes to rules, they are a lot, innumerable. You can't even count. And now, look at the amount that we are talking about to be able to construct all these rules. And don't forget, the rules are not the only demands of people. We have innumerable demands from the people. So government, operating government is just like you and I. We also have limited resources, yet our needs are what? Innumerable. So all what I have to advise is that people will have to be educated on some of these things so that they get to know that it is not intentional, that government has not constructed the roads, or it is not intentional, or it is not based on corruption that government has not constructed the roads. It's just the fact that the money is not there. And anybody that thinks government of Ghana has so much, so much, that all our needs should be met within a day, maybe we have to begin to educate what? Them. Let me give you this example before I land. Last year, GRA was given a target of 145 billion. 145 billion. Now, the 145 billion, take note of this, will constitute just about 75% of total government revenue. Total government revenue, 75% of that is coming from GRA. This year, it is 189 billion. It has increased from 145 billion to 189 billion. Now, 189 billion is no money. It's no money. 189 billion, we have not even collected that, so let's use the 2024. 145 billion is no money. Compensation alone is taking 35% of that. So we shouldn't think government just has the money and refusing. I think people will have to be educated for them to get to know that just as you have challenges in terms of your earnings and what? Your expenditure, is the same way for the government. Government also has challenges when it comes to earning and then expenditure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doc. I like where you ended. Yes, I'll come back to. I wanted to add on that. The education bit. I think what we were also looking at is how is GRA, since you are the entity responsible for collection and you are the one facing the people, it is also ideal for you to have things or educational materials that show the people you are going to get the money from, what is being used for. Do we have such things? Does the GRA have such materials?
Yes, so you are right. You see, when you look at the same Section 3, the Section 3 actually details our functions, and there are about 8 of them. Anybody that has the law, you can go there. GRA Act 791, that is 2009. Now, the same section, okay, mandates GRA to carry out tax education. So it is one of our functions. We are supposed to educate the populace. We are supposed to educate people on, their tax responsibilities. We are doing our best. We are telling people. But as we said, it all boils up to funds. And we may be lacking in certain areas. For instance, you talked about having flyers to educate people on what government is using our monies for. These are some of the things that we can actually do to let people know that despite the challenges in terms of meeting the needs of the people, government is doing a lot. Now we have our flower pot interchange or flyover. It is tax. We have circle interchange. It is tax. There are so many things that we can talk of or we can talk about that what tax monies are actually being used for. And I think this is what we are lacking, and I'll take it up, that we can, if we can have flyers, even billboards, to let people know that even the free SHS that your child is enjoying, it is what? Tax. And that would be very helpful. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I think I'll give the mic to IFS.
Okay, if I could just make a quick one.
It seems everybody wanted to make a quick one, so just go ahead.
No, I just wanted to prompt you that I think the first question you asked him, he clearly mentioned that they collect, so uses rest with. And you also asked that at the local government level. So I was thinking maybe at the local government level, I'll be in a better position to perhaps indicate what these taxes and whatever are used for. Basically, Dr. Komba just mentioned one aspect of which is the compensation. In the eyes of the citizen, they are looking out for what they get, not our salaries that are being paid as workers of government institutions. So they want to see the maintenance and goods and services aspect and maintenance, which is one aspect where government money goes into, and then assets, which is capital expenditure. That is where you have the roads, the educational facilities, and the health facilities for all. So that's just briefly what I will add. And these two are what actually, if you are looking at the report we are looking at the informal sector, and these are the things they are looking out for, that even if though the money is inadequate, but that which you have collected in the accountability equation, we want to see it being used to something that we can say directly that is our benefit for paying even the little that we have paid. Thank you.
All right. Yes, all right, thank you so much. I mean, just to add to this whole issue about what I call voluntary compliance, and clearly that is the key driver of tax revenues. I mean, in an economy like ours, where there's so much informality and all that. So I think, I mean, where Dr. Combat left off, I think that's really a good place to land. That yes, the GRA would, try to build in into their line of activities things that would sort of provide indications on what tax revenues have been used to do, right? So basically, more or less, I mean, providing some information about, okay, look, your tax money has been used to contract Road A, Road B, or build a hospital and all that. I think that's really very important. And we need to, as GRE, identify or realize that compliance is a big deal. And when it comes to revenue mobilization, the key driver of revenues is voluntary compliance, as I said earlier. So you must find a way to get people having a higher intrinsic motivation to comply with tax obligation, which we call tax morale. So the guy, without even the GRE coming to him, he himself inherently have the feeling that, look, I need to pay my taxes. But why would he have that feeling? He's going to have that feeling because he looks at himself, he looks at his state, and then he feels that, oh, I'm getting a lot of benefit from the government, right? Whether directly or indirectly. So the messaging of information, so the GRA approach to taxpayers should not only be about, okay, look, I'm coming to you, you've made ABC amount of revenue, we're taking tax on it. No. The GRA must also have a package of, a package of information that talks about really what revenues are used to do, right? So more or less say, okay, look, yeah, we're coming to collect money for bill, but you need to also know that the monies that you are paying are not going down the drain. They are used to provide A, B, C, D services, which are good to you. So that level of education and information dissemination is good to beef up what I call voluntary compliance, and it is the ultimate lever when it comes to actually raising tax revenues in a setting like ours in Ghana. Thanks.
Thanks, Dr. Combat. You raised some very key issues, but just to point out to the point of or the issue of corruption, we cannot underplay that in any form or shape. I agree perfectly, even if you go into issues concerning illicit financial flows, the allocation or the contribution of corruption to that has been estimated to be just about 5%. But the point is that at the back of the other handles or contributors to IFFs, below it or beneath them, you see tendencies of corruption. in Ghana, I was thinking through, sometimes I spend a lot of time thinking through a lot of things. We've learned a lot of principles, but in real life, how are they applied? For example, if you say a road has been constructed, a hospital has been constructed with debt, at the end of the day, how is the debt financed? It's financed through internal revenue that we have mobilized. We agree to the fact that they borrow to service those things, but in the long term, they will end up using internally generated resources, which are either through taxes or through revenues they've mobilized in relation to maybe our resources to finance that at the end of the day. Dr. Combat raised a very valid issue. I've spent time looking at 3 elements within the fiscal data that Ministry of Finance provides in relation to our tax revenues. Compensation, as is mentioned, the servicing of debt, and then goods, as you've said. If you like, when you go back home, assess that data and check, you will be talking about close to 83 to 85% of tax revenue being used to provide this for these 3 things: compensation, goods, and then servicing of debt. So if we are using a chunk percentage, and if you check very well, servicing of debts, the magnitude of amount that goes into it is closer to the amount we spend on compensation. Very serious. So invariably or indirectly speaking, every project that takes place in Ghana, even if funded with debt, in the long run, the effect is that it's serviced with tax. That point must be clearly made. The interesting thing is that if you go to all the sites that are funded with debt, you will see the inscription there nicely. They will say, oh, we got this loan from something. But if it comes to what has been done with taxpayers' money, you don't see any branding of it. How will people be motivated? How are we communicating to people that even if these things were built using debt, in the long run, they are paid through our taxes? That is something that is very critical, Dr. Combat. You might want to, just like you mentioned yourself, take up as part of your educational activities to let people know that even if those things were built with debt, at the end of the day, they are serviced, those debts are serviced with our tax revenues. And so the effect is that it's actually tax revenue that has been used. Somebody pre-financed it. The dimension of corruption, I want us to take that very, very seriously. Just like he mentioned, for me, what can drive voluntary compliance? You can do it from 2 hours, having a discussion with him. Voluntary compliance can be driven from 2 perspectives. Tax is a legal matter. Failing to pay, they can enforce the law against you. But on the other hand, we do not have good systems. You can't enter Europe and say that you will not pay your taxes. It's not possible. You will be found out and you will be dealt with according to the law. But somebody can be in Ghana. You can meet someone who might be, let's say, 50 years old and has never paid tax before. We are talking about direct taxes because we are talking about voluntary compliance. Indirect taxes, you don't have the choice. Once you are buying the thing, there's no volition about that one. So anytime you are discussing voluntary compliance, then you have entered into the domain of direct taxes. So that's the presumption. You can meet someone who has never paid any direct tax before. It's possible. How can we get such people to come to the level of voluntary compliance? It's a huge thing. You can't get them compelled by law because you can't find them. That is 1. 2, then it becomes a matter of what? Moral kind of conviction. People pay offerings, like Jeff was saying. You go to church, you pay offering. Not because the pastor has a cane on you to pay. No, you pay out of your own volition. Voluntarily, you pay. Can we get to the point where people can walk to GRA and say that I have my tax I want to pay? I look forward to that day. How can that happen? It can only happen if the expenditure side of things are looked at carefully. And the issue of corruption cannot be underrated at any point. Look at I end on this. Sorry for taking your time. I end on this. Look at the Auditor General's report annually. You see the levels of waste. I'm a finance person. I have accounting background. I understand the issue of irregularities. It could be issues of non-compliance with laws and those type of things which sometimes accumulate into some of those figures. It's not like real taking away of money, but there are some that also has to do with issues of corruption. Look at the report we hear from time to time. The OSP is reporting people who have taken funds, a lot of allegations all over the place. When is a researcher? When the people mention those things to you, that is their general perception. And how can we, in an economy of this nature, get people to walk and say that they want to pay their taxes? To be a difficult thing. Finally, met a professor in Norway who at the time was willing. He was willing to do 68% of his income in tax. Prof, why? He said he has a child who has been educated, he's a medical doctor, and he has never paid a dime. He himself went for a nose surgery at the time we were talking, very complex, complicated surgery. He said, I didn't pay a dime. Then he ended and said to us that if the government is efficiently managing our resources this way, and I don't have any burden personally, even if they ask me for all, I'll give it to them. And I looked back and I was very quiet. Say, I can't say this in Ghana. So I'll end on that note. So the issue of mismanagement of state resources, whether from perceived position or actual position, it's something we cannot underplay. The manifestation of corruption in all forms and shapes has implications, direct implications for voluntary compliance, whether they are actual or perceived. We can't run away from that. So I just want to say that the element of corruption we cannot underplay at any point. Thanks for your time. Sorry.
Thank you so much. I'm already enjoying the panel, and I was just nodding. And of course, yes, currently, even looking at what is happening right now in the news and all that, definitely, if you keep hearing all these scandals that we are unearthing, it will be hard or difficult for you to say, I voluntarily want to pay my tax. So I think, Dr. Combat, we are driving it home again so that you you take note of that. I'm moving to Mr. Mubin. A minute.
Yeah, sorry, very quickly. So on the issue of corruption, I think I just recently published a paper which is looking at the linkages between corruption perception and tax morale. Now, in that paper, I established that corruption also varies a lot by institution that you are looking at. And GRA in Ghana is seen to be one of the most corrupt public institutions in the country. So clearly, I think if you really, connecting to what my brother said, if you want to drive voluntary compliance by improving the intrinsic motivations to comply with tax obligations, GRA must find a way to position itself as a very non-corrupt entity in the eyes of the public, right? So I don't know how you're going to do that, but I think there could be a way for you to ensure that at least whatever it is, if there are officers in the system who are going and collecting some monies and pocketing it. I remember there was a workshop at Fiesta Royal Hotel. I think, Dr. Komba, you were also there as well, with market women and all that. And one of the things that market women said was that when people tell them that they don't pay taxes, they get really shocked by that because they know that they pay the taxes. And they even pay to GRA officers. And so when you come and tell them that they are not tax compliant, then it's more like you are, insulting them because they've paid. And she was very, blunt to say that, look, when your officers report to you, i.e., your officers in relation to GRA, when they report to you that the market women are not complying, tell them to sit and you audit or investigate them because that money would be in their pocket. That they can't collect this money in cash and they don't remit it to the GRA, and then they will say, oh, the market women did not pay the tax. So there is a perception that GRA officers are engaged in some corruption-related activities, which makes it really difficult for people to trust them, and thereby also, have that moral obligation to comply with their taxes. So I think key would be for GRA to sit and find a way to sanitize the system and ensure that they have a clean sort of picture or clean posturing that itself would sort of endear them to the people, and then the people will want to pay their taxes, without having to, of course, if you give me your money to an armed robber, you find it difficult to do that, right? But when you are giving it to a pastor, it's easy because you know it will get to God, isn't it? So, yeah.
Just give me
No,
1 minute.
let me just say something. If one thing has been very evident in this research work that we did is that the informal sector workers, especially taking the market women and all that into consideration, they mix levies and then the taxes. So the levies that goes to, let's say, Mr. Mubin and his group, and then the one that we know as tax, that is in the tax law, that will go to Dr. Combat and his group. So that is one bit. And I think I had a discussion with Dr. Combat, very lengthy, I think last week in his office, and he made mention to me that even right now, they have digitalized their system. They don't take cash at all. But I will give him the chance for him to hit on that.
Yeah, so I think you are right. I just wanted to say that because of, when it comes to tax administration and dealing with people in person, you see, we are all vulnerable, not only GRA officials alone, but everybody here. When you begin to deal with people in person directly, that is where the temptation is. So GRA, getting to know this, has decided to automate its systems. So now, everything is online, aside the informal sector taxpayers that we are talking about. Everything is online now, so you don't deal with the tax officers. The tax officers are not supposed to deal with you directly because you can file online and you can also pay taxes online. And that is actually helping us. In fact, even penalties and interest, which hitherto were generated physically, is no more like that. Everything is generated automatically. So you don't have that contact with the tax officer. In terms of even collection of TCC, it is now done online. Everything is done online now. So just to tell you that GRA is doing a lot to eliminate physical contact with people so that we can reduce corruption drastically. But I'm sure the next time you do your perception survey, we will be at the bottom. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This has been a very interesting discussion since morning. And I was just looking at the panel right now and I realized that we didn't even have a woman on board. Gender. I'm just one out of 5. Okay, so I'll move to Mr. Mobin, local government, representing local government. And thank you for inviting us most of the time when you guys are doing your budget process. So I want to link that to the discussion right now. In your when you go to the communities, especially when you want to develop your budget to submit, what are some of the issues that, because we are now looking at what do the people really need? What do they really want? When you go to meet them, what do they say they need in their communities?
Basically, when we engage...
And include the market as well.
Yeah, when we engage the citizenry at the local level, in terms of when we are planning and designing projects and then preparing budgets to align with the plans and the projects, the most dominant thing that comes from the citizenry is the infrastructure. So if you take my assembly, for example, if you prioritize the needs of the people, at the topmost is actually roads. That's the topmost distance that they need within there. And it's not like just grading and then periodic reshuffle. They want proper roads that are motorable and that will facilitate their trade. And then when we involve them too, in terms of the payment, like Dr. Komba clearly mentioned, tax at the local level, all payments to government institution is considered tax. And if you take the market women, for example, the high cost of doing businesses and then how their goods and services get stuck on the road, not only within Accra, but wherever they go to pick it from the source till they get to their final destination in the market. And actually in the market itself, there are numerous challenges which they will keep asking, because for them, if you look at what the report said, it says that the women, in terms of the gender issues, feel unfairly treated and harassed, they cannot hide. They are just before us. And day in, day out, you see the revenue collectors in their reflectors going to them and asking them to pay the daily tolls, the rent, the permits, and all the licenses and the fees that assembly do collect. So the question come back, what are these monies being used for? They ask it, and that formed the basis of their willingness to pay day in, day out. So the apathy is so wide to the extent that at a point, when you call them to even do the budget preparations for them to understand where the monies go into so that they can make input to, frankly, those who participate, but you see the percentage that goes into the capital expenditure is so low. You see the compensation still getting higher. And like I said initially, they are not interested in that compensation. They are not interested in that. They are interested in what comes to them. So you cite, let's take Domi Market, for example, where we say it here. When it rains, the whole place is flooded. Yes, there are some activities of the market that contribute to that. But basically, the infrastructure is inadequate to accommodate all of them. While one person is sitting in a proper structure, the person is still challenged to ask the assembly that, what is the money being used for? Because it's not adequate. So whatever that we collect, and when we put it out there before them, they are still not satisfied that it is enough because the problem is not solved. And the main aim of all of this is that get our problems solved.
Thank you. So just tying into that, you made mention the market women will come and all those things, especially those that goes to the hinterlands to bring in the foodstuffs and everything. Are you able to get your levies from them?
Oh yeah, they pay.
They pay.
Yes, actually they pay. Like
okay.
They
come at dawn. Let's put this in perspective. They come at dawn, very, very early in the morning. Yeah. Sometimes me, I will still be asleep. Yeah. If I'm not asleep, I'm awake reading. But do you have officers that goes out there around that time to take levies from them?
Yes, though the officers are there. That's what we call haulage. The officers are there at that dawn to collect the monies from them. They always go. And then beyond that, the daily toll, they pay rent.
Okay.
If you are occupying a government facility, they will pay rent on it.
Okay.
Those who erect their own containers, they also have to pay permits on the containers.
Okay.
And those on table to also pay the daily toll. So
Good.
basically, I would say they pay.
Good.
It's the regularity that is an issue.
Good. Yeah. So now would you agree, and one of the things I am advocating for is to have your levies in conjunction with what we are collecting or GRA will need or the tax together. And my reason is that we have the VAT is very structured. We have the Get Fund, NHIL, COVID, which thank God is even off right now. That's another discussion. Dr. Komba, don't bring it on. That's another discussion. But and in a way, when all those monies plus the VAT itself are collected, there is a structure in place that will now disseminate the money to the authorities that needs it or the right accounts. Would you agree with me that we should have, because you have a system that actually gets money from them, at least if not perfect, at least there's something in place. Would you agree that if we have the two harmonized together, one, and then we can now share, is it something that Ghanaians would want to look at or would want to pilot?
Yes, I think it is not necessarily taking it all together and sharing, but then that at the point where the reporters, at the point of collection or whatever, they get to know the various payments that they have to make and understand that there is this component that go to GRA, which is called the VAT or the income tax and all of that. It is all at that one point that we can integrate all of it. And I think with the property rate collection that GRA piloted for about a year, there was something similar like that because they sent somebody to the assembly and they were there. When people walk in and want to make inquiries or collect their bills for property rate, then they are referred to GRA and then all the other things add up. It's just the same challenge that we will face, the same challenge of what am I going to get out of this, whether it is levies and fees and licenses from the assembly or is GRA tax. the challenges remain the same, that what are we going to get out of this? But it's possible that we can find a common platform to harmonize it.
Okay, great.
Sorry, just to add to what Dr. Komba said and then what you just ended on. So I think the local taxes and then the central government taxes, I think clearly, I mean, you're taxing the same person, right? In different ways. There should be a way to collaborate, right? There should be a way to collaborate in the sense that what the guy is doing, the activity the business is actually engaging, the local assembly has interest in it, the central government has interest in it. So clearly, both of you must be interested in providing what I call enabling environment, right? So you must have a cooperation, a partnership with the local assembly. So he mentioned this thing about flooding in a certain market. Yeah. Flooding destroys produce, right? So if you are interested in actually collecting more, then you must create the environment for a lot more transactions to occur. So reduce flooding, makes the market more trouble and all that. So GRA must take really passionate interest in how these local, markets function, and then work very, forcefully with the local assemblies to ensure that these markets are put into, are made more habitable, more structured, to allow for a lot more economic activity to go on. So yes, on the consolidation of the levies, these local taxes and the central government taxes, I would say that good to treat them separate. Clearly, one goes to the consolidated fund, which is the part that GRA collects, and it depends on actually the tax type that you're looking at. So whether it's income tax, whether it is VAT and all that, these are all different things. So they go into the consolidated fund. The local assembly actually collects that money and keep it as an IGF, right? So, and they need that IGF to run the assembly. I mean, if they have to go through the laborious processes of getting an allocation, appropriation and all that, that becomes an issue. So I think it's good to keep them separate, but we need to make them efficient. So if there are issues with the design of the tax, we need to look at it and make it more efficient and more fit for purpose. And then encourage deeper collaboration between the local assembly and the GRA. So GRA should not say, oh, I'm not responsible for the local market. My job is to collect the revenue and send to consolidated fund. GRA must take interest in the function of this market and see itself as an important stakeholder who has a responsibility to ensure that this market operates and operates efficiently.
Thank you. GII.
So you are right. When it comes to tax, levies, tools, you see, there are distinct, different types of sources of revenue for the government. But they are different. You see, tax is completely different from levy. Because, as I said, a tax must go into the consolidated fund. Maybe levy, toll, they must go to the district assembly. So they are completely distinct and different, sources of revenue for the same central government and its district assemblies. However, the difficulty in collecting these levies, taxes, tolls, and all that, I personally will advocate that it is put together and then one institution, it could be GRA or the district assemblies, they collect it and then we split it into the tax component and then the levies and tolls to make it easier. You see, you go to collect tax from somebody and the person says, I have already paid other taxes. And every effort to educate them to get to know that this is a tax, this is a tool, has proven futile. We have done it over the years and it has proven futile. In fact, when you go to the market right now, they do not know the difference between tax, toll, and levy. Must we continue like this?
Till when can we be able to get taxes from them? I work with GRA. We go to them and we are embarrassed because we cannot get a peso from them. Why? Because AMA has come to collect the tax. And they don't know the difference. So because of this challenge, I will advocate. If we can put it together, or we can put them together and get one institution. GRA, as he mentioned, we were collecting property rates for district assemblies, and they earn a lot. So if we put it together and decide who should collect it, eventually the tax component will come to GRA or into the consolidated fund, and then the other aspect will also go to them. You see, the problem is because of the way we have decentralized our system, they are always at the receiving end. Because when the road is not good, they don't say central government. No. They will say assembly no onyashi. You go out there, they will tell assembly onyashi, assembly. Have they ever said, maybe, excuse me, President Mahama onyashi? They will say the district assembly is not doing well. So how can we harness or how can we tap or get revenue from the districts so that part can be used to take care of their needs? The needs are just innumerable, and tax revenue alone cannot do it. And government says 5%, is that not it? Act, not less than 5%, that is Act 455, right? 1993. Not less than 5% and not less than 5% when we have over 200 district assemblies. We ASICA. What can this be used for? And then they will continue to demand. They will continue to demand. They will continue to demand. I live at Adenta. Our roads are terrible. Very, very bad. And everybody is eyeing at a district assembly. So what can they do to earn income so that they can be able to construct some of these roads? Thank you.
Great. We are really behind time.
Yeah, sorry, it's a bit burning in my stomach. So I think it's important for us to be very clear that whether it is, regardless of the name that it is called, is a tax. Whether it's a toll, a levy, or a tax as we call it, it's all a tax, right? You're actually paying something to either a government or a local assembly to be used to provide, services for you. I mean, in one way or the other. So it's a tax. So what I think GRA needs to do is actually to get to these places where there is a difficulty in people understanding the various types of taxes that they are supposed to pay. So as a business, so like if you take a formal business, right? A formal business has different types of taxes that he or she is supposed to, that business is supposed to comply with. So first is PAYE for your employees. Second is what? Your income tax. The third is your VAT. So these guys are the same human beings as those guys operating in the informal sector. So if you go to them and have a good way to educate them and then sit down and then tell them that, look, in the system, we have different types of taxes for different purposes or different activities. And then tell them, okay, look, if you are doing activity A, the income that you get from it, it is tax. It's subject to this tax. Activity B income is subject to this tax. Have that education together with the local assemblies. So the local assemblies must tell them, I remember there was a discussion on this market, the levies for the market stores and all that. Collaborate with the local assembly to ensure that you do that deeper education and do flyers. Sometimes when you are talking to the guys and they are forgetting, do flyers. So go to the market and have like a small flyers that you can paste around the market. I haven't seen that. So, I think it's important for us to get back to it. That, look, tax education is very important, and we must not make the point that these guys in the informal sector are so, excuse my language, are so dumb, like illiterate, that they can't...
Sweets and budgets, most of the community engagements that we did and even market storms. And even we had one of them that we brought the item leaders from Carnation Market. We had a very cozy time and with them and the conversation. You realize that when we were talking, anything we were saying, they were excited. Especially when we started talking about the tax reliefs. They were so happy and they even want to benefit from tax relief. But they didn't know that even for you to even benefit from the tax relief, it comes with another obligation. You should file. And like we rightly said, most of them now fall within the one that Mr. Mubin and his group will go and collect, levies. But we can't file levies, can we? It's not, right? So, local government level. So, though, and it's rightly that when you open up and you explain things to them, yes, they are excited. I'm like, okay, we didn't even know this one was there. Oh, this one, it's actually, so I think Auntie Tina, Madam Tina from Sweet, in her presentation, I think even for most market women, are supposed to pay like 45 cedis a quarter. Just 45 cedis. Well, I'm saying just, but it's not. Yes. Yes. Mm-hmm. Please, there are people online and they have questions too, so please have the mic.
We talked about the modified taxation, though it has not been formally launched, but we had a permission from GRA, and we talked about it, and they were really, really interested in it. And like we're saying, when you file your returns, certain things you enjoy. Like we're saying again, the levies and things, it's an allowable expenditure. That is, it becomes part of your business expenses. But when you pay income tax, it doesn't form part of your business expense. And so you cannot say that we paid, they are the same. They are not the same. There's difference in it. And so the more we meet the people, the more we educate them, and they become aware of their civic responsibilities, they will start paying. And so we should all encourage each other so that those who are capable of sponsoring such things should be able to do, so that we visit them, because they say they want more people. They want more education. They want not more people, they want more education. And to go a long way, when we were talking about this, we did one market outreach at, was it Malata? The people said, if we pay and all, look at the floor. The place is so muddy. So how do you say we pay? And it's the duty of the assembly. You see, it's the duty of the assembly. So the assemblies are so that kindly visit the markets. And for them, they see Fidelity Kadochi. When they see, they will also comply. Kafili Kadochi. Seeing is believing. And so we should also be, talking for GNR as well as AT and the good works they are doing. Because like Mr. Dr. Komba said, the monies are not too much, but the hands on it is many, a lot. And so we are all here to help each other. Tell your sister, your brother that this is what we need the monies for. And it will go a long way to help the nation develop. Thank you.
The monies are not too much, but the hands are many. So on our YouTube, we have people on YouTube. Yes, I want to close by one. I promise people I will close by one. So we have people online, and someone sent a question. Some part of it is a comment, another part is a question. Total is a comment, and I read. It said, what? Revenue include taxes, loans, grants, and others. Why are they talking as though they only use our taxes to develop infrastructure? What happens to the loans which are taken to develop infrastructure and yet abused and repaid with resources, including taxes collected? They should minimize corruption and spend our resources judiciously. After all, monies paid from consolidated fund don't know the market woman's tax and formal tax, etc. Bottom line, use our resource judiciously and accountably. So that's what someone also sent online. So, Council, give your. I think we should do final remarks so that we can wrap up.
Okay. I agree with the person. In my earlier submission, I raised a similar point that if you do a deeper analysis, you come to one conclusion that everything that is financed from the public perspective is an income from either tax or from the resources that we have in the long run. If you take loans to build any infrastructure, at the end of the day, we use tax revenues to pay it off over time. We have situations where we borrow to service previous loans, but at the end of the day, when it comes to the final repayment, it comes to the tax resources. So everything that we do which is linked to our development can be linked to our taxes and then our natural resources. I come back to another critical point. Listening to you, some things were running in my mind. Whether we name them levies, whether we name them tolls, whether we name them taxes, don't forget, we have the principle of multiplicity of taxes. If we want to go really into that, I don't want to go into that now, but to raise the point that if you go to the same market woman and under the label of levies, tolls, and collect all kinds of monies at different occasions from the same person, it is part of the person's revenue that you are collecting. Let's not lose sight of that. What does that mean, effectively? The person is losing income. And this person naturally would have to react to that by trying to minimize that as much as possible. And I asked the critical question of, why would we, for example, collect taxes and use close to about 40%? How many people work in the government, the public sector? About 7,000 people. We are talking about 30-something million people to contribute money, and we are happy to use 50% to go and pay some 7,000 people to the neglect of the remainder. Is that a good thing we are doing? If we come to the district assembly level, I don't know how many people work within the district assemblies, that you collect money from everybody who is operating within the district assembly, and you use a chunk of it in the name of internally generated fund to go and do things that do not inure to the benefit of the people you collect the money from. What are we doing? Public sector is excessively loaded with people who are in there. We hear about ghost names, bloating of payroll, and all those kinds of things are happening. If we collect money from all of us and we use that to service the salaries of a few, are we doing the right thing? What will benefit the generality of the people, which is the capital expenditure, is getting about 3 to 5% of the total revenue. And I think we have to rethink this whole thing as we move along. There are no justification whatsoever. If you tell me we borrow funds in terms of the loans and we use the tax revenues to service them, I'm happy to align with that reasoning. Why? Because we must see the loan delivering something on the ground. I don't know if you are linking up with me. But very unfortunately, I'll end on that note. We have seen situations where roads have been constructed. Do you get it? And those roads that have been constructed, and they do not last the lifespan of the repayment of the loans. So, you see, we have very complex challenges in this country that we need to sit down and think through very well. We are our own enemies, let me say that. Because if we talk about the fact that the revenue is not enough, I disagree with that. I totally disagree with that. We can go into that debate and discuss it properly. The issue is we are into self-setting objectives. Sometimes it looks as though we are misplacing priorities. How can we collect revenue from 31 million people in whatsoever form, people paying direct taxes like we were raising, and we use it to service the salaries of 700 people, buy goods, which goes to the interest of those same people, and then what goes to the generality of the public? People can argue. I'll end on that. People can argue that the salaries of some of those public servants, do you understand, go to people who provide some other services to the public. I agree with that. The police, the military, blah, blah, blah. That is great. But the point is, at the end of the day, the general direct beneficiation, the market woman wants to see something on the ground. If you have all the people in the assembly paid, and at the end of the day, the market is not conducive, this person who is doing the business, don't forget, technically explaining this, for me, taxes are like what is paid, part of profit that is paid to shareholders. Whether we like it or not, government is a shareholder in our individual lives and in our businesses. When we make profit, government comes in without compromise to take a share of it. Let's ask the question, what is government contributing? You are supposed to contribute infrastructure, security, utilities, and all that. Are we providing those things efficiently for us to say that we deserve a portion of that profit that the businesswoman is making? Let's ask these questions and push for those things. Until we address these challenges, we can't get to a point of voluntary tax compliance. I raise these things with a lot of passion for us to begin to rethink it. That's why I mentioned that the issue of corruption cannot be discounted. When people see mismanagement of state resources and their markets are not functioning very well, and we say, keep quiet. This is toll, and this is toll, paid. It's different from tax. This is levy, keep quiet, pay. It is different from tax. You can explain everything. The person will not agree because government that is deemed to be a shareholder in the business is not contributing his or his fair share or its fair share, let me put it that way. And so these are critical issues that we need to think through so that in the engagements that we have with the people, we can get them to appreciate this. I'll end on that note. We can have further discussions on this subject matter. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Do I have any chance?
Do your final words. We are not coming back again.
I think the research team have done a great job. I'm very happy with this. We can decide to clap for them. For GRA, we were banned from clapping for GRA, but for the research guys, we can clap for them. They've done a great job, and I want to believe each one of us should become like an ambassador in sharing the findings and then contribute in our own way. Like I indicated, we should be able to, in our engagement on other platforms, convince people. For me, the two sides of the equation must be balanced. Once we are pushing for increase in revenue mobilization, we should be talking about accountability and the efficient utilization of our resources. We can't close our eyes. We cannot be asked to close our eyes, close your mouth, just talk about people should pay, they should pay, they should pay. What is the money being used for? Each one of us must speak to the two sides of the equation, including GRA. We know GRA by law is mandated to implement our tax laws and collect revenues for us. But in their feedback to their masters, they should tell them the things they hear from the ground. Their masters do not go to the ground. They might be carrying out their service and all that, but it is GRA that is closer to the people. All the feedback that we have shared in this room, GRA people know it better than us. I don't know if you understand me. How many of us, if you are not working in GRA, has ever gone to somebody to collect tax before? No. The reaction, we only get these feelings when we are conducting researches. I have been at Abosoka, I've worked with some AGI people, and you hear the direct feelings like you are sharing. But they do it on daily basis. So in sharing your experiences with your bosses in the feedback, especially to Ministry of Finance that designs policies, tell them that this is the reality on the ground. The big people who use the tax resources, who are the other side of the expenditure bit, should be mindful that to achieve voluntary tax compliance, the people don't want to hear anything than to see efficient utilization of their resources. I will end on that note. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. IFS. Yes.
All right. This is my final remarks.
It's exactly one. And I promise we'll close
all right.
at one.
Yeah,
so
thank you so much. So I think Benedict hit one of the points right on the head, which is the statement Mr. Dr. Combat made in relation to the quantum of revenue that we are collecting vis-a-vis the expenditure, to say that it is not enough. It is absolutely the other way around. We're collecting a lot more revenue. The question is about the utilization of that revenue, right? So I think, just to break down what my brother said in relation to the fiscal equation, I think clearly on the revenue side, we see that governments get revenues from three sources: taxes, debt, and taxes, debt, it includes a grant, and then money printing. Now, out of these three, we see that tax revenue is the most sustainable source of generating revenue to finance development, right? So if you want to finance development and you're looking at it in the long-term perspective, out of these three, the best is tax revenue. And I think Benedict made a good point that when you borrow today, clearly you have to pay for it tomorrow. And tomorrow, how do you pay for it? You're not going to pay for it printing money, no. You're not going to pay for it by borrowing again. And of course, our previous finance minister says that you cannot borrow yourself out of what? Debt, right? It is not possible. The only way you can actually win yourself off debt dependency is to mobilize more revenues domestically so that you can pay for that. You can retire those debts, right? So tax revenue mobilization is a key to development, and we must take that very seriously. So I think looking at the other side of the fiscal equation, which is expenditure, for me, to be honest with you, I think the discussion on it cannot be done here. If you want to have a proper discussion on the expenditure side of the fiscal equation, we cannot exhaust this here. There's a lot of nuances to it, which we cannot, spend 2 hours or whatever it is to distill, digest that. So I think we may want to have another round of discussion to look at the expenditure side, right? To be able to do justice to that as well. But on the revenue side, I'll just end by linking my, all that I've said to this project. So clearly this project is important, it is necessary, and it's also timely. It's a project that clearly identifies one of the big areas where there are gaps as far as revenue mobilization in the country is concerned, which is taxing the informal sector. Now, it's been an issue on the table of government to sort of work out what is the most efficient way to tax the sector, right? But the only way you can tax a sector is when you know them. The only way you can kill a cat is when you know the cat, and all that. So you need to know them. So a research like this sort of gives us some information about the characteristics of the players of the sector, right? And once we know them, we know their motivations, the key things that they have in their mind when it comes to tax compliances and all that. And once we have that together collected, the next thing for us to do is then to sit down and think about, okay, what does that information mean to us as far as, deepening compliance from that front is concerned, right? So now it is for us, the researchers and the policymakers, to sit down and distill the evidence that was presented here by the researchers to try to see how we can connect that to revenue mobilization efforts, especially collecting from these people. And when you're thinking about it on that tangent, key is okay, thank you. So when you're thinking about it on that tangent, the key would be for you to really think about, I remember I said this in the last validation session, think about feasibility, right? What is feasible and what timelines are you looking at, right? So when I have recommendations and I say this is what I want to do, I want to tell the story of, okay, look, this is ultimately what we want to do, but can we do it now, right? The GRA says, they've introduced a lot of, digital platforms to ensure that people are complying with their taxes. Question is it working? Are they targeting the right people, right? Is there a lot of connection to these platforms and all that? So mind you, one of the things that have been said, I think somebody said it this morning, that you're deploying a technology to somebody who is potentially illiterate when it comes to being digitally savvy, right? He's not connected, he can't do a USSD code and all that, and then you're asking that person, go dial star, whatever it is. So clearly it is not going to work. So that is why you need to now think about heterogeneities in the system. Think about how different the players in the system are. They're not all the same. So you segment the system and say, okay, look, for this type of people, this is the technology that we are going to deploy to them. For the other type of people, this is the way we're going to approach them. So when you have that in mind, then you can now be able to do business. But when you don't have that and you box everybody into one box, you're clearly not going to make any progress. So I think, I'll leave it here, but I guess there's still a lot more work that needs to be done. The clapping to GRA will be done later, not today. Thank you.
Dr. Idris from IFS. Just a quick one on Dr. Idris. Dr. Idris is very, very passionate about tax work. And anytime you engage him, you just get to know, everything is just coming out. And so I'm so happy. He has been with us since the day one that this project started and has contributed to fine-tuning a lot of things on the project as well. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Mr. Mubin or Dr.
Okay.
Mubin, right?
Mr.
Since
Mubin.
we are conferring titles
No.
today, Mr. Mubin, please go ahead.
I think from the report that the findings that we have discussed, it is clear that improving revenue, or if you like, tax from the informal sector, it is just giving back to the same informal sector where their needs will be met so that they can continue to pay the right amount so that revenue in general can be improved. We really need to do proper assessment and design of our projects so that they can be tailored to the needs of the community in general, and more specifically, so that they can continue to pay and pay enough to generate revenue. And in doing this, we all acknowledge that at the local government level, that there is direct relationship between government and the people. So if any project is coming to meet the needs of the people, the local government must be involved so that the people will get to contribute to the design of the project so that it will be responding to their needs. So improving satisfaction with the little monies that we generate as government is key. Let's tailor it to the needs of the people. The satisfaction will improve, they will continue to pay, and the returns will come back to government to continue performing well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And also, Mr. Mubin has also been very instrumental. All our MMD issues that we have, especially on the project and everything, even sweets, all of us, we go to him and we call him. What is this perspective? How do you
Sector is. So if we have researches like this, targeting the sector, I think it is fantastic. It's great. Now, all what we have to do is, if revenue coming from the sector is just 1%, what can we do actually to increase the revenue from the sector? I think that is where the discussions should be. And the recommendations and then the suggestions to improve revenue from the sector, I think we have to be serious with them. For instance, suggesting that over the years, we have not been able to collect the taxes because they complain that, a lot of officials come to them to collect that. You pull your hair from the nose. After you are pulled, somebody else comes. I'm pulling again. Somebody else comes. I'm pulling again. Will you sit down and let them be pulling the hair from your hair? Who will do that? So these are some of the strategies that I think we have to begin to think of. For instance, collecting the monies together and see how we can distribute. There's also another one that I want to suggest. Can't we collect the money and part of the money be used for social security? For their future. You see? Can't we use some, yes, strategies just to get them to pay? It is not booga in the sector. You are supposed to pay tax, and therefore we should rather be developing strategies to actually harness revenue from the sector. And we are grateful for such a work. We will utilize your recommendations, and when you make the presentation to GRA, we will pick some of your recommendations and see how we can further make recommendations to the Ministry of Finance for change of policy regarding the informal sector, that we can actually get revenue from the sector. Thank you so much for the great work. We are grateful. Thank you. Yeah, so I've responded to that. I said in terms of the corruption, you're talking about taxpayers coming in contact with tax officers. That is where the problem is. I have a penalty to pay. I have interest to pay. I need TCC. And then I have to come to you in person to collect this. That is where the influence comes in. So what we are saying is that we don't actually want to have our taxpayers engage with the officers. And that can actually reduce the the corruption. But when it comes to no. The other aspect, let him just
Dr.
land there.
Combat,
I'm just
Dr.
landing.
Combat, we are really out of time, and there is another part of this whole thing that we need to launch, the report itself.
Right.
So I know these are discussions that it wouldn't end here. Dr. Idris said, it's a huge one.
Right. Thank
so
you.
we'll continue on
Thank
another
you. So
note.
you can see me in person.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I had a very interesting day today, and I think it's a day well spent. Thank you all so much. I would want to officially acknowledge our donors for giving us this opportunity to do this work. Special acknowledgement goes to the International Budget Partnership. They were the donors. They gave us the support to be able to conduct this research work, and I want to officially acknowledge them. And also with our partner, our implementation partner, that is the Society of Women in Taxation. They've been very wonderful, and also Budget being another youth organization, and you get opportunity to interact with women who have been in the space for a very long time, and they understand tax issues, and then they are also guiding you. We are very, very grateful. Auntie Rosemond, Madam Isi, you don't know how you've done to us. Like, we've learned a lot, and we know we are still learning from you as well. Thank you so much. Dr. Combat, thank you. My time with you last week was just amazing. I learned a lot. Doc took his laptop, sat me down on his desk, and he showed me so many things. I wrote a lot of things that I didn't even know. When I was entering, that was not the purpose, but I was able to learn at his feet. And I'll be coming for more guidance as well. To our consulting team, thank you so much, Gabriel. So Gabriel had his Viva yesterday, right? So he's soon to be doctor after his graduates. And thank you for being here in place for Prof. Owusu, a.k.a. Amando, and Professor Boateng. We are very, very grateful. And Roxanne, too, for also being here. I'm wrapping up. For the World Bank, also thank you for the opportunity last year to witness the PFM for service delivery, and which also is also another at the backdrop that we are doing this. We are going directly to the launch of our reports. My board chair is here, a very astute woman, someone who every day she will call you, she knows what you have to do, and then she'll go straight to the point. Jennifer, have you done this? Jennifer, you know when I told you, and I know that I'm in trouble, but she has been very, very amazing. And each time I see her, I'm very excited. She's also the founder for Women in Tech Africa. And she's a very tech, fintech person. And having her on my governance team has been very great process as well. So let me welcome Madam Thelma. Ethel, sorry. This one I know I have to pay with lunch. Madam Ethel Kofi is here to launch, and with that, I also have, after you finish launching, we'll bring some people so we can take pictures, and then that is for my graphics and my social media. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I was called 2 days ago and told I must be here. So, actually, this has really been an exciting conversation. I've been involved in different capacities over the last 2 weeks with the District Assembly's Common Fund, and with actually my company is part of the organizations for writing the technology part of the National Decentralization Policy. And so we've been knee-deep with MMDAs. And so this whole conversation, I love that the way we're having the conversation, right? We're not having the conversation not just at the GRA level, where we're talking to local government, we're thinking about how local government interacts with this. They wrote a speech for me to read. So I've got to try, I don't have glasses on, but I'm going to try and read it. distinguished guests, partners, stakeholders, and fellow citizens, it's with great honor and a deep sense of purpose that I stand to officially launch this important report on Ghana's untapped economy. Now, it's an analysis of the tax compliance behavior of the informal sector workers in the Greater Accra region. Today's launch is not merely a conclusion of a research project. It is the beginning of a national conversation on fairness, inclusion, and accountability in our tax systems. The informal sector forms the backbone of Ghana's economy, yet its realities have long remained underexplored in fiscal frameworks. This report brings to the fore the lived experiences of hundreds of informal workers, highlighting the gaps, the challenges, and importantly, the opportunities for reform. As chairperson of the board of directors, I am proud of Budget Ghana's commitment to data-driven advocacy and grateful to our partners, the International Budget Partnership and the Society of Women in Taxation Ghana, for their collaboration in making this research a reality. I urge all actors, government agencies, civil society and community leaders, and the media to take forward the insights shared today and transform them into lasting change. Here's what I'll break from this a minute to say. I think one of the things that we need to be really good at is communicating the insights, right? So it's a really good, nice, big piece of paper. But in order for it to be disseminated to our communities with the infographics, the salient points need to be out there, whether it's social media, whether markets, we have to see the graphics, right? So that people can pick points from there as we learn. So it's not, because frankly, it's only you and I that would love to read these long papers. But the people that would need to understand these things, we are going to have to send them snippets and bites, especially for our journalists, right? Because sometimes you do an event and then you see the headline after and you're like, what happened, right? And so we have to make sure the right information is out there. So now, with the full authority of my office, and on behalf of the Board of Budget Ghana, I hereby declare the final report on the informal sector tax compliance in the Greater Accra region duly launched. Yay! May this report serve both as a mirror and as a guide and a reflection of our fiscal realities. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Osa, Hosa, hosa, ho. Hosa, hosa, ho. As night fades out, faded by the sun, 10,000 men stand high on the hill, and our silence as the essence still. 10,000 men travel for the kill. The vultures fly, the wind is high, the warrior fights, the battle of fall, the scavengers wait, each man gets paid, death is paid, the battle of fall. Hosa, hosa, ho. Hosa, hosa, ho. Hosa, hosa, ho. Hosa, hosa, ho. Scavengers wait, each man gets paid. Scavengers wait, each man gets paid. Death is laid, the battle of fall. Hosa, hosa, ho. Hosa, ho. Hosa, hosa, ho. Hosa, hosa, ho. Hosa, 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 ho. Hosa, hosa, ho. As my face are faded by the sun, 10,000 men stand high on the hill. Allow silence as the earth is still. 10,000 men trample for the kill. The vultures fly, the wind is high, the warrior fights, the battle of fall, the scavengers wait, eternal hate, death is made, the battle of the fall. Hosa, hosa, ho. Hosa, hosa, ho.